Hello. Today we're going to talk about one of the first books, science fiction fantasy books I ever read, and it's a classic. Uh, it's inspired many people over the years. Many authors were inspired by this. Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, Carl Sagan. Many people have attributed this book and other books by this author as really inspiring them in their own endeavors in literature and science. And that is A Princess of Mars, written by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Uh, this was his first book that he wrote, and he started off. This was, I think, in 1911 he wrote this, and he wrote it in several parts and submitted it to a circular magazine, which then published it over several parts. He didn't even use his real name because, as the author, because he was worried that business partners of his, because he was in his 30s, he was like 35 or 36 or something when he wrote it, would think he's crazy because it's kind of a far-fetched story, and for the time it was really out there. So he wrote this in 1911, and it was I think it was originally published in the magazine as Under the Moons of Mars, but eventually a few years later it was published altogether in one volume as a novel, a short novel, as A Princess of Mars. And it tells the story of a cavalry officer who, gosh, I don't know what the year was, but it was in the, I think, 1880s or something. It was after the Civil War. This cavalry officer named John Carter and a partner of his were out in the Arizona desert searching for their fortune, hoping to strike it rich in silver or gold. And they end up getting tracked by a band of Apache Indians, Native Americans, and chased into, and his partner is killed, and he's chased and he hides in a cave to get away from the Indians, and the Indians are all right on his heels, about to catch him, and something about the cave frightens them, and they run off, and he ends up suddenly being paralyzed and falls down onto the floor of the cave, and he can't move. He hears something in the cave, but he doesn't know what it is, and eventually he passes out. He thinks he's going to die from lack of water or whatever, and he wakes up in a different world. And he doesn't realize it right away, but he's on Mars. And he's naked, no clothes. The gravity is different on Mars. And this is something that Edgar Rice Burroughs tried to use science a little bit. It wasn't just, he tried to use it a little bit. Little was known about Mars at that time, and he used stuff from that astronomers and various people had discovered back in the mid-1800s to establish what Mars was like, which was speculated to be dry and arid and a desert-like place which had canals across it. That was actually a mistaken translation by an Italian astronomer, or from an Italian astronomer, about these canals. But anyway, he took it literally, and he thought they were, Edgar Rice Burroughs said there were canals, and that it was a dry, arid place without much water and that type of thing. And that's the place where he found himself. And realizing that gravity was less, John Carter at first wasn't even able to walk. He was crawling around. He'd try to walk, and he'd go flying many feet in the air, trying to get his bearings and get used to the gravity, the difference in gravity. Once he's there, he discovers a small enclosure, almost a cement or a stone enclosure with a kind of a glass transparent roof, almost like an incubator. And inside it, he sees all these eggs which are hatching, and these little green people are climbing out of these eggs. It's quite crazy. I mean, he calls them people, but they're different. They have 4 arms, 2 legs. These small people, obviously not human, or not very like him. Anyway, very shortly, the owners of this hatchery come upon him, and they pretty much capture him. He can't really stop and get away from them, although they're quite amazed at his ability to leap and fly like 50 feet in one jump and stuff like that. But they are able to capture him because he has no weapons. He can barely walk. And they take him and all the little children back to their home place, which was an abandoned city where they lived. And once he's there, he's put into the care of a female of this species, and they are really tall. The males are like 15 feet tall, and have 4 arms, 2 legs, big tusks coming out of their mouths, in a dark green color. Sound pretty ugly, to be quite honest, and but they're very strong and they're intelligent, but he can't understand them, and they don't understand each other. Once they're back in the city, he's put in the care of one of the females. The females are slightly smaller than the males, and her name is Sola. And the man who caught him, he finds out his name is Tarkus, and he's a pretty important warrior among these green Martians that are called Tharks. Their tribe is called Thark. And he is a Jed of the Tharks, which is like a prince or a leader. He's not the king of the Tharks, but he's a prince of the Tharks. So he's pretty important. Anyway, he's put in the care of Sola, which is a young female, and she has a kind of like a dog that they put on to watch him, and his name is Woola. And he's very bright, very smart, and he doesn't let John Carter out of his sight. He watches him every second. And so John Carter is not allowed to leave the city. He can walk all over and explore, but he's not allowed to leave them. Because when I say it's a dog, it's like a dog, but it's the size of a small pony, so it's quite large, and he really can't get away from it. And even if he could get away from it, he doesn't know where to go. He really knows nothing about where he is and anything that's happening. So once he's with these Martians, the Tharks, they feed him, and then they give him some kind of drink. And once he drinks this potion, he can understand them. He understands their language now. And that, of course, makes life a lot simpler. And he finds out that there are several different types of species of people on Mars. He realizes it's Mars now, and they call it Barsoom. Anyway, there are what they call the red Martians, which are much more like us, have a kind of reddish tinge to their skin, dark black hair, and then there's the Tharks, or the green Martians, of which there are many different tribes, and the Tharks is one of them, and one of the larger and stronger tribes. Anyway, he's a prisoner, and he's kept there. He gets into a couple of scraps with, he gets into a fight with somebody, another warrior, and with one punch, because of his strength, because since he's used to Earth gravity, he is so much stronger than the typical person on Mars. So with one punch, he basically kills one of these huge green Martians. And apparently this guy was a pretty impressive warrior himself, and in their society, by defeating him in single combat in a fair fight, he now basically becomes a member of their tribe and is considered one of them and a warrior. And but many of the people of the Tharks do not trust him. Tars Tarkas is okay with him, but the leader of the Tharks does not. And so he's watched carefully, and that will come to be a problem later on. One day, the city is all of a sudden comes under attack by a bunch of flying ships. They look like ships floating through the air, and John Carter sees basically these floating ships come over the city, and the Tharks start shooting at them with these long rifles that they have, and basically ambush these ships. And one of the ships crashes, and as it's crashing, a prisoner is taken. And the prisoner, of course, as this is a bit of a romantic story, and if you haven't guessed it by now, there's going to be a princess of Mars in it, and that is Dejah Thoris. She's, of course, incredibly beautiful, and she is a red Martian. And John Carter's like, oh my goodness, she's amazing, and she looks like me, and she's not like the green Martians, and he's amazed. But he doesn't really get to talk to her, and of course he doesn't understand the social the statuses of Mars, and of course males and females and men and women, they have to talk to each other in a certain way, and quite quickly he finds out that he says the wrong thing, and he basically gets himself in trouble. He calls her, he saves her, but from dying, and she's kept as a hostage because she might be pretty valuable. And he tries to figure that he needs to escape and save her from the Tharks and get her back to her home, to her family. And but how can he do this he doesn't know where to go, and she's under guard all the time, as is he. Woola never leaves him and watches him. And anyway, eventually, him and Dejah Thoris talk to each other, and he's, after spending some time with her, he's falling in love with her, and he says one day, "Oh, my princess." And by their tradition, she calls him my chieftain, and she calls him my princess, and that's like basically getting engaged. But he has no idea, and he ends up basically somehow insulting her, and she gets upset with him and doesn't want to talk to him anymore. He later then has a duel to the death with some other Thark, and it gets pretty carried away, and quite a bit of shenanigans ensue. They go off to see another the Warhoods, like all the tribes of the Green Martians meet together and stuff, and the Warhoods and the Tharks are kind of like bitter enemies, but they come together, and in the end, he tries to escape with Dejah Thoris, and he takes her, and they run off into the desert. He's able to tame the big, they're like horses, but they have like 8 feet. They're huge, and they're called thoats, and he gets on one of them with Dejah Thoris, and they escape, but they don't have enough supplies, and they basically are running out of water and starving, and pretty soon they're recaptured. Although Sola, who has become Dejah Thoris' friend, escapes with them, and they find out that Sola is actually Tars Tarkas' daughter, even though he does not know it, and they're about to be captured by Green Martians. I think it's a tribe that's not friendly to the Tharks, and John Carter basically says, Sola, take her away, escape, and and save her, and I will hold off the Green Martians coming to catch them, which he does. Except he does eventually get captured, knocked unconscious, and captured and taken back to their city and thrown in the dungeon. And while he's in the dungeon, he meets Cantos Can, who is another Red Martian who's captured and in the dungeon, and he finds out from him that they're about to be put into the arena. The arena is a basically fight to the death. The winner of these games in the arena, kind of like gladiators in ancient Rome, the winner, the sole survivor of all of these battles, and they fight against wild animals, other people, whatever. The winner is supposed to be freed. So at the end of all of these fights in this arena, John Carter and Candace Can are the only ones left alive. And since they've become friends, Cantos Can pretends to kill John Carter in the arena, but he's not really dead. And then after the fight, it's dark, and John Carter once again escapes. Candace Can was from Helium, which is the nation that Dejah Thoris was from, and he tells him about Dejah Thoris, and John Carter tells Candace Can that she's still alive, and he's all excited because they've been searching everywhere for her, and he promises that he will somehow find a way to get Dejah Thoris back to Helium, and Candace Can says he will help, of course. But Candace Can never shows up, and later we find out he was captured by the Zodangans. Zodanga is a country that's at war with Helium, also Red Martians, and Candace Can is captured by them. Well, while John Carter is searching for Dejah Thoris and hoping to meet up with Candace Can, he doesn't know that he's been captured by the Zodangans. He runs across one of the atmosphere factories, which is a building which creates oxygen to keep the planet of Mars alive. Without these factories, these plants producing oxygen, everybody on Mars would die. And so he somehow gets into this place, and he learns the secrets of it, and somehow he's able to read the mind of the man inside the factory, the atmosphere plant, it's called, and that he was going to basically kill John Carter because he doesn't want the secret of the oxygen plant to be known. But since he understands what's going to happen to him, John Carter escapes, and this is important later because at the end of the story he has to go back. Anyway, he then goes, continuing trying to go to Helium. He learns some stuff, and he finds out he's in Zodanga. He meets some people that are nice to him and help him a little bit. They give him a dye to dye his skin because he's so white, and the Red Martians have a reddish tint to their skin. So they give him a dye to put on his body to make him blend in with the Red Martians. And he finds out that something's going on in Zodanga, and he's like, maybe like Dejah Thoris is in, if he finds out that she's there. And he goes and he finds out that Dejah Thoris had been captured, her and Sola had been captured by the Zodangans, and the king of them wants to turn her, make him marry his son, for his name I think is Sabathan, and she's supposed to marry him, and then that'll bring peace between Helium and Zodanga. But she doesn't love Sabathan, and she refuses to marry him, but she's being forced to. Well, of course, John Carter finds this. He goes back. He finds Tars Tarkas. They lead an attack. Tars Tarkas has since basically become king of the Tharks. He's killed the Jed the Jeddak of the Tharks, who's the king of the Tharks, and he's now the king of Thark as well. And all of the Tharks join together, and following John Carter and Tarkis. They march on Zodanga. They attack Zodanga. John Carter sneaks in, opens the gates, and they rush to the palace where Dejah Thoris and Sam Thaner is about to be married. And in the nick of time, they stop the wedding. John Carter fights the Sam Than, and he kills him and saves Dejah Thoris, and they promise they love each other. And then they find Cantos Can is in the dungeon. They free him, and now they take the army, which is just looted Zodanga, the Tharks, army 150,000 Tharks, and they charge off toward Helium, where Helium was being besieged by the Zodangan army, and so of course they attack the rear of the Zodangan army to help the armies of Helium, and between the Tharks and the Helium army and navy, they're able to win the battle and win the day. And the king of Helium, the grandfather of Princess Dejah Thoris, thanks John Carter and agrees that he should marry his granddaughter, and so basically they get married. Now, interesting thing here, Martians don't have live children. They lay eggs. As you saw with the Tharks, they had hatched from eggs. Well, the same is true of the people, the Red Martians. And though Dejah Thoris, after many years of John Carter's apparently on Mars for about 10 years, and they have an egg that they're waiting for it to hatch, when all of a sudden everything goes to heck, and apparently the atmosphere plant guy who's running it has died, and nobody can break into it to save it, and all the people of Mars are about to die. And John Carter remembers that he knows the combination, he knows how to get in there, so he rushes off to save the planet by opening the gates to this atmosphere plant, which he barely does in the nick of time. As he passes out, he opens the gates, and the technicians rush in to start the equipment and start the atmosphere plant. And guess what? He wakes up. He's back in Arizona in the cave where he passed out when the Indians were chasing him 10 years ago. It's covered with dust, and he's like, oh no, my Dejah Thoris, I'm lost. And that's basically, there's a kind of an epilogue. He does find the gold, and he does get rich, and he becomes a rich man, but he can't get back to Mars, and he's heartbroken. And that's kind of the end of the story. Now, an interesting thing here. This was, as I said, it was sold to the publisher as a serial, and many spots along the story, a lot of the chapters are like cliffhangers because it was made to be in a publication which was over several parts. So there were all these cliffhangers for you to stay interested and want to come buy the next magazine to find out what happens to John Carter in his adventures. And if you as we read John Carter books, Edgar Rice Burroughs books, whether it's Tarzan, John Carter, a lot of them, they have that theme where there's a lot of cliffhangers at the end of chapters. Oh, what happened? And then it'll change the venue to talk about another character's story and leave you hanging about what happened to so and so. And it's quite a good thing, and it made you really want to keep going to find out what happens in the stories. And another thing that Edgar Rice Burroughs used was he used kind of a device where the story is basically told by John Carter, the main character, to a relative. In this case, in the John Carter series, it's to his nephew, Ned. And so the story is told to Ned like it's really happened. And John Carter has told this to him so he would know what's going on. And as the story continues, you'll see more things happen to John Carter. But that's the first book, A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs, written in 1911, I think published in 1912. Sold, I think, to the magazine for $400, which is amazing. The artwork of these books is amazing. I'll put a little clip of one of the books off of Amazon. Some of it's the artwork is really cool on a lot of the books. They're fascinating. These are also public domain now, so you can actually get them pretty much almost for free. You can buy ebooks for 99 cents. I think you can get maybe even free through the Gutenberg Project. There's audiobooks available on Audible. I think the Audible book is about 6 hours, maybe it's 7 hours long. They're short books. You can read it in an afternoon if you're a fast reader. Definitely easy to read it in a weekend. And they're great books. They're fun adventures. And once you've read them, you really do get hooked on it. It was, like I said, as a young teenager, my mom gave me the first one. I read it and I was hooked. And I read them all. They were great. And then I moved on to some of the Tarzan books, which are also excellent. He wrote books about a guy going to Venus, going to at the Earth's core, which is to a world called Pellucidar, also fantastic. Also a lost island, which had dinosaurs and primitive caveman and stuff on it. Also fantastic book series. Only 3 books in that series, but also really cool. So really neat books. Fun, short, lots of action. They're not really too serious, but really neat. And amazing world building for that time. Back in that period, science fiction it was in its infancy. H.G. Wells had been writing novels for about 15 or 20 years, but there wasn't a lot of science fiction that you would consider very good. I mean, H.G. Wells, of course, was fantastic, but a lot of it was pretty crude, and that's how that's how Edgar Rice Burroughs got started. He said, "Hey, God, some of this stuff that's out there is terrible. I can do better than that." So he wrote a story, and it was great, and he turned it into a career, and wrote, and millions of books were published by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and he became a very, very famous author, and his books were turned into movies and all kinds of things. And but Princess of Mars, his very first, and arguably, definitely one of his best. Amazing story. Check it out. Like I said, I'll put up a picture of the book on Amazon. It's available there. Also on Audible for audiobooks, and search for it. You can find it everywhere because, like I said, it's public domain now, so you can get it for nothing or practically nothing in many locations. So that's all for now. Hope to do the next one sometime. That one's called The Gods of Mars, where John Carter, guess what? He returns to Mars. Let's find out what happens there. Okay, so one thing I wanted to add. John Carter of Mars, a movie which was made by Disney a few years back, is based on John Carter of A Princess of Mars, the story. There are some elements, especially at the beginning of the story of the movie, which are fairly faithful to the book. The descriptive stuff of the Tharks, the Green Martians, is actually pretty cool. They did a nice job of that. But the rest of the story is really not at all like the book. Actually, I enjoyed the movie. It wasn't bad. I liked it. I would have loved to have seen a couple more movies continue that story, but it didn't do well enough in the theaters and stuff for them to continue and make any sequels. But just so you know, there is a movie out there. Check it out. It's very different than the book. And if you like the movie, read the book. I think you'll really enjoy the book. If you've read the book, go ahead, watch the movie. I think you might enjoy their take on it, but it's pretty different than the book. It's not going to be very faithful to the book at all. I mean, there's some interesting stuff, but it's quite a bit different. So just be aware of that. Not saying the movie's bad, because I actually did enjoy it, but it's not. It's very, very different take, and the story's changed quite a lot. But that's all for now.